I went into working with my dad during lockdown, and that's reached over 1 million subscribers on YouTube and 7 million followers on TikTok.
Imagine getting 10 million followers on your social, hundreds of millions of views. My next guest is going to teach you how he did just that for his customers and how he can do it for you too. Curtis, what do you think people need to do to get it right?
I think a lot of people make selfish content, but that's not always how you should start. That's a key to success, is to give more than you get. You can never be an expert if you're a jack of all trades. If you're building a following on social media, you can't be great at everything. Lead with the stuff you're best at. You can branch out afterwards.
I mean, how does the monetization side work? Thank you, GoDaddy, for sponsoring this podcast. You as a listener get 40% off. The code is down below. Curtis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
It's great to have you.
Great to be here.
Wonderful to hear, have you here with us in the studio. Look, let's start off by telling the audience that don't know about you a little bit about your history.
So I first started off, I left school, I went in to start my own business doing videography. And then I worked with lots of clients, traveled the world, working with big brands such as Red Bull. Then I went into working with my dad during lockdown, and we built up a channel on YouTube, all to do with personal finance and investing. And that's reached over 1 million subscribers on YouTube and 7 million followers on TikTok. So we're really, really enjoying working together and helping as many people as possible.
Now, you've been helping us with our podcast and our content, and actually I've learned so much from you. It's one of the reasons I wanted you to come on the podcast today and share with our audience all the things that we've learned from you.
Yeah, I was really happy when you invited me on.
No, we feel lucky to have you here because we know how busy you are with your millions of followers across all the social media platforms that you now manage. But tell us, where does it begin, for people listening, where does it begin to be successful on social media? Where do you think people should start? If they're listening now and they want to start, or they've got a social media channel isn't working, what do you think people need to do to get it right?
I think a lot of people make selfish content, and to put that they make what they want to make, and they see social media as a place to put anything that they feel passionate about. But that's not always how you should start. So we've had a lot of clients come in my consulting business, and one of them, for example, is a musician, and he wants to write his own music and put that out there into the world. And that's understandable, but how is anyone going to find what he's putting out there when he's not actually putting content that people want to watch? So first, you've got to focus on giving to people first, which is the same with anything in life, and it's what I've used in business. Then you can actually receive. So if you give more than you receive, then you're going to be successful. So he can start off doing videos, maybe reacting to content or doing challenges around music. People will come in and then they'll find his original content. So I think that's a key to success, is to give more than you get.
And I think a lot of people listening will actually be reflecting on that point. And it's very hard to know what you think is giving and what isn't giving. So, for example, if you are a music person, you're able to create music, you are giving, you think, by producing that music and putting it out there. But like you say, that in some people's eyes is not giving, because they don't necessarily know who you are or appreciate your music yet.
Exactly.
So
and I also find that they give all of their best stuff first, and then it's all out there, and then no one's there to listen to it. So you need to build that audience first, and then there's a big audience there for when you do want to release your best stuff. Sometimes people then re-release their music afterwards because then they've got that audience. Yeah,
you don't know why, but this story you mentioned there reminds me of Matt Groening, who created The Simpsons. He originally gave The Simpsons to the studio as something rubbish he didn't really think was that good, because he wanted to do Futurama. That was his big jewel in the crown. So he gave them The Simpsons as a way of getting in the door. His rubbish idea that eventually, and
then that was the best one.
That actually it turned out to be, not in Matt Groening's eyes. He thinks Futurama is better. But there's an interesting point again. So people don't necessarily put out the very best they've got. They build up to it. And so I know from the learnings you've given us, niching down and these sorts of things. Anything you could teach us about focus?
Yeah, so when I'll go back to my videography business at the start. When I first started, I was trying to be a generalist. I was doing wedding videos, music videos, everything that came my way. And I was charging a little bit of money to do that. First off, I started free, and then I built up my portfolio. But then you can never be an expert if you're a jack of all trades. So I think that's a big learning in business, and also if you're building a following on social media, you can't be great at everything. You can be really, really good at one thing, and that's what's really going to get you through the door. So it's like an arrowhead approach. You lead with the stuff you're best at, and then maybe later on along the line, you can then do other stuff, not necessarily just the speciality that you're doing, but that comes afterwards. You can branch out afterwards. That's what I think anyway.
And so for people listening, how does that translate into actionable items? So people should look at what they're good at personally, if they're going to be in front of the camera and focus in on that, and then look for a niche. Like I know when you built up your dad's channel, it was financial literacy really, right?
And financial awareness as well, not financial advice.
No, not financial advice. Well, I mean, again, that financial literacy is I often tell people that as an entrepreneur, I'm pretty good at business, but I'm not financially literate. So that's why I don't have a financial literacy channel. I know how to make money, but that's not the same as investing money, right?
I feel like you're definitely getting to that point where you are though, like with all the NFT projects.
Well, that's an education, isn't it?
Yeah,
and I
it's
think
always improving.
But again, I wouldn't probably lead with it as and maybe people listening, if you know what you're good at, you should really get better at it and not just try to do the things you're not good at. Especially if you see, because the other thing I think that I see on social media is people will see that a certain person is successful and they'll try and copy them and not be themselves, right? So, I mean, that there's an easy trap to fall into for a lot of people, isn't it?
Yeah, I think there is something to copying, and I think a lot of people start off copying and it gets them creating the content. But the way that I think to do it successfully is to look at all the people that are successful in your area or your niche, so you know there's a hungry audience for your content, and then take the best aspects from all of those different channels, mix them in with a bit of originality from yourself, because nothing's truly original. So then you get to a point where you have got original content, and then you can start gaining followers from there. You're never going to be the perfect, like lots of people tried to copy Casey Neistat back in the day. You're never going to be better than him if you just copy everything he does. But you can take different aspects from other channels and maybe be the best version of yourself. That's something you can do.
I'm actually very inspired by Casey Neistat. He followed me on Twitter recently. It was like my biggest achievement.
That's awesome.
Last year, that was my biggest achievement. And
I once got an email back from Casey Neistat about something. I was like, whoa.
Wow, we need to throw this up on the screen. Yeah. What was the email?
Oh, no, it was just me saying, like, I think I commented, oh, this guy's looking doing the same style as you or something like that. And he went, oh, thanks for letting me know. But that was like years ago. Like when I was 16, I was like, wow, he actually responded to me.
That's incredible. That's the other thing, isn't it? I think social media, and I've noticed this, and I'm sure in your business you've seen it too, that if you actually engage on the comments, actually talk to people, you as the person, not you hire someone to do it. It makes a huge difference, and that's one of the tactics I think you're doing on your channels. Right?
Yeah, that's a huge thing. So imagine you had like 5 comments on your YouTube video, then you responded to every one of those 5. Now you got 10. Now if they respond to those comments, you could have 15. So you've tripled your engagement just by responding to people, and you're building like long-term loyalty there, because I think, oh, like if it was my dad, oh, it's Mark, or oh, it's Curtis, and we know him because we've chatted to him before and we want to watch his stuff.
But the other thing I noticed that you do that I think people can learn from is that you video you replying to people on comments and put it on things like stories. So then people can see on other platforms that you're replying on that platform, which is really clever psychology, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like, oh, we got to get over there, we got to get our questions in, you know, we're going to get an answer, and they can see it's actually you, not some agency out in like, I don't know, China or something, just replying to comments.
Is there an agency in China that can reply to all your comments? That would be a good business.
Maybe in India though, there's a lot of people that do that in India, but there's a lot of spam comments and all of those people trying to scam people on the comment sections, which is a big problem at the moment, but we're trying to get away from that.
I did find it at one point. I was on Clubhouse and every day going live, and I used to get my DMs were literally like thousands of DMs a week, and it got quite stressful actually getting back to everybody. And then you miss a few people that get offended. So how do you manage the overload on that side?
That's a hard one. It's very hard. We see most of the DMs that come through, but lots of the people ask a question. They're like, oh, can I ask a question? And that's the worst thing to ask, because then you've already asked your question. Right. And now we have to say, sure. And then we have to make sure to see it again, which is a problem. And then if we don't see it, they think we just ignored their question. So if someone's going to ask a question, make sure to be, not a massive paragraph. There's your question. It's very clear. We can help you. Then there's no problem answering it. But when it's a massive paragraph, we have to decide what is their actual question. And it's very hard to then reply to those people.
Exactly the same thing. This now becomes a two-sided education for people listening. If you want to talk to people on social media that you think can help your business, can support your business, can endorse your business, then don't say, hey, is it okay if I ask you a question? Just ask the question. And the other thing that I get that I just, I want to reply to everybody, but people do 5-page messages. And so, you know, I try to skim to see if there's a question.
So do I.
To see, I don't want to let people down, but no one's got time to reply to 20,000 comments of long five-page messages, right? So just keep it short as well. It's a good point for people, right?
It's like their life story sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
Like, sure, we'd love to know that once you've implemented some of the advice, and maybe then we see that you're working on something. And that's a great thing as well to do. If someone does give you advice and you manage to reach out to someone, let them know like, oh, this is what I've been doing, and then you feel like helping them more because you see the progress.
The other thing I've personally been leveraging a bit lately is voice. So I actually just leave people a voice message, and it shows that you're not just some weirdo somewhere. They can hear your voice if you're mad or not, right? So, but there's some instant connection there that I find, and I tell people, hey, don't write long messages, just leave me a quick voice clip. I've been reading out my comments to my son as well, so I tell people try to keep it nice because I'm reading it to my 4-year-old. Right? But it's an interesting thing. Like the algorithm is something always comes up. Are there any tips? Let's focus on TikTok for a second. Do you feel like there's an algorithm thing? I noticed on your content, for example, you consistently have high views, whereas on my content sometimes I have a lot of views and then very low, a lot of views and very low. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, TikTok's a completely different beast to YouTube. Everything hits the algorithm, and then it depends what video it goes against. So it's kind of like a survival of the fittest. If the video is tweaked the correct way, then anything can go viral. But then depending on your follower count, that also doesn't mean that the big followers will always get the views. So it's a very equal platform. Rather than YouTube, you're guaranteed a certain amount of views, and then it might hit the algorithm. And if you have a very small channel, you're not going to hit it at all, really. So TikTok's a great place to start if you don't have followers. But yeah, you've got to tweak in a certain way, get that hook correct, and pull people through the video. Make sure there's no dead spots. Like lots of people leave breaths in their video. So when they're asking a question, answering something or saying something on camera, they're like, right. And they start the video like that as well. They're like, and I'm saying that because I've seen that in one of your videos before.
That's true.
And then you changed it though.
I did. Well, I learned from you. Yeah. Because sometimes you also you have to edit it, and it's not so easy to edit it. So if you're doing like, I wait now a few seconds because I'm recording, and then I start talking. Because otherwise you press record and you're like, and everybody, and you're trying to get the oxygen. Yeah. So I think we're telling people not to breathe when they make content. Is that? Or just put a little disclaimer down the bottom. But
you've got to be natural as well. Like you can't reel something off without breathing. So yeah, of course, a little breaths are fine. But when it's like the key crucial hook, and you're spending 1 second of your 3 seconds breathing in, then it's just not going to work.
If this podcast is inspiring you to start or grow a business, then I recommend you use Taylor Brands. They are our sponsor for this podcast, and they help you not only craft a brand, but design merchandise and so much more. In the last year, I've used this site for every single one of my businesses. I couldn't recommend them more. And we've even negotiated a 40% off discount code for you. Just use PEP, P-E-P, when using their website to make your booking. Now, let's get back to the podcast.
So just carrying on with the TikTok learnings for a second. So, of course, that hook at the beginning is really important. And like you say, bring people through the video. And then getting people to watch to the end is a big thing on TikTok too, right? Because then TikTok sees that it's content that's... And if you can get people to watch it again for a few seconds, it really makes
That's where the magic is, you know, watching more than 100%, getting that repeat view. And what we like to do is when we're dragging people through the video, we're dragging through with questions like each... So we have a 2-person narrative usually that we use. And then we ask a question to one person, then the other person answers, and then so on. So there's never an end to the narrative, and then there's a lesson at the end. But usually throughout, we put like different information, different tips that they have to watch again to then read those tips. So that will give us that 100%, more than 100% watch time. And so that's a little trick that we've used, and we always make it under 30 seconds as well, so that it's easier for people to watch more.
At the end of this podcast, we're going to make a TikTok and put it up on TikTok. You guys can go and see the master in action. So
awesome.
But so I guess the other thing people ask a lot about is like the hashtag strategy. And focusing on TikTok for a second, we'll go over to YouTube in a minute, which we know 1 million subs in a year that you managed to get on YouTube. Incredible.
I do prefer YouTube as a platform, but TikTok's great for people starting off.
Right. Yeah. If we put that into TikTok, they'll probably block it. So, but it's I guess the thing with YouTube, it's monetizable as well, isn't it? Much easier. TikTok does have a monetization system, but it feels like it's very weak compared to, say, YouTube's ability to generate return. on investment.
I think it's very hard for them to actually monetize it correctly, because they can put like adverts every 5th swipe or something, but then how do they attribute those adverts to the content, and how do they distribute it correctly? I think at the moment they've just got the fund that then they distribute, and I think that's out of their own pocket rather than ad revenue. But yeah, there must be a way to eventually do it, but it's such a great concept, isn't it, to get people watching?
Totally. I think but I think your strategy, and again, you know, I've only studied what you've done, so you feel free to say what you've done, but is that you became very big on TikTok.
Yep.
You really focused a lot of time and energy on getting TikTok right, and that led to people who became fans following you through to YouTube. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, no, definitely. There was specific things we did to pull people over to the YouTube channel, just make a piece of content that stands on its own, which was important, not just adverts for the YouTube channel. But then drag people, like, if you want to see more, then there's more on the YT channel. You can't say YouTube, because then that'll get blocked by the algorithm.
I thought it was an urban legend. Is that actually true? If you say YouTube on it, then they go, oh no, we're blocking that.
Maybe it is an urban legend, but that's what I believed. And if I was TikTok, I always try and put my mind in the platform's situation. So would I want someone advertising their YouTube video on my platform? Probably not, because it's going to stop the watch time. It's going to stop the watch session.
You're going to leave your site.
Exactly. I would just imagine that's how they would think.
And I think it's right. I think it's right. It's just I find it interesting how sometimes these things become like, let's talk hashtags, for example. I speak to someone every single day who's got a different opinion on hashtags. But what's your view from all the experience you've had? Yeah,
so we always use learn on TikTok, hashtag learn on TikTok, because that was something that TikTok told us to use a while ago, and that's our content. If your content isn't learning, then obviously it's not going to be applicable.
Our millions of listeners are now about to use learn on TikTok.
Now it's going to be flooded.
Now it's going to work for anyone. I think it's already got like 60 billion or something, some ridiculous number.
A lot of people use it. But TikTok was having a real push on learning content, because they wanted to make the platform not just singing and dancing, but actually educational as well. So I think that is a real point to use hashtag learn on TikTok. And we always put that first. And then we have 4 hashtags, 2 that are narrow, 2 that are broad, meaning like narrow as in not many views on the hashtag, and broad having lots of views on the hashtag. Then you can work your way up the narrow hashtag to the top, hopefully get more views, and then it'll help you boost up the broad hashtags. That was my strategy from the beginning. Now we kind of use more broad hashtags just because we probably can. But when you're a smaller TikTok creator, then doing that strategy really helped us.
I tried something, and by the way, for my listeners listening, I'm a fraction of the success of Curtis and his team. So listen to Curtis, not me. But we've tried a strategy of creating our own hashtags. So we have learn entrepreneurship.
Yep.
And so we've managed to get 180 million views, leveraging that as our own.
Yeah.
But other people are using it, but we've kind of made it one of our main ones. And then Be Your Own Boss, which we ran a partnership with TikTok, has got nearly 500 million views on it.
That went crazy, didn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy. And you helped, actually. You were involved in that. So I think that it's interesting to also own your own hashtag and start to build that up.
I think that's for when you're slightly bigger, then you can have that power, and then other people are going to see you using it, so then they're going to use it as well, because they think, oh, that's their secret sauce that's making them successful, but then it does help you as well. So that's a good point, actually. We should start doing that.
Yeah, no, why not? And so I've taught you something.
There we go.
That surprised me. I think the other thing, I'm switching to YouTube for a minute, the other thing I think, of course, people are always interested in is like, how much do YouTube pay people? You know, so I think one of your videos, I was just looking at 1 million views, huge traffic. I mean, how does the monetization side work? Because I think it varies depending on what sort of content you're producing, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it depends on your niche, how much CPM you get per 1,000 views. So with maybe a beauty channel, it'd be mid-range. I'm just chucking some numbers out there, probably 5. I don't have a beauty channel, but $5 per 1,000 views. Then a car channel will probably be 10, and then our kind of finance channel in the 20s. So it depends on the time of year as well. We've just had January, which was not a great month for ad revenue, because all the advertisers blow their budgets in December, and then they don't have as much money to spend in January. So that was a real shock. And this year has been the worst January for years, you know. So it does depend on your type of content and when you're posting the videos.
Interesting, yeah. It's and that makes people probably think about, if they're listening, what content they should go after. Is there anywhere out there? There must be a site that actually shares what is the most valuable content to share. Now, I know the richest YouTuber, I guess, is an 8-year-old who opens up presents and makes 40
Ryan's toy reviews, isn't it?
That's right,
Yeah.
and he just opens up presents. Must every kid's dream.
Exactly.
I'm scared to show my 4-year-old that YouTube channel because he's going to think that's a career, like just getting stuff for free and then opening it up and making millions.
I can see you making a YouTube channel like that.
Yeah, I think maybe I should. I'll give up this education in business lark.
We could do both.
You could do both. But is there one that's up there like that, or is finance feels like it probably is?
Yeah, I'd say the top one is Amazon FBA. That content gets like $40 per 1,000 views.
Wow, and that's because if you're doing an Amazon FBA education series, then every Amazon FBA product business will be advertising in front of you, won't they?
Exactly, and it's targeted marketing for them, advertising as well. But I would say don't pick your niche based on what's paying the best, just because you're not going to have your heart in it, so you won't get as many views. So even if you did like a beauty channel and you got more views, you have the possibility of getting millions of views per video, whereas an Amazon FBA channel, it doesn't have that possibility, maybe 50K to 100K. So you could be earning the same amount doing what you love. It just depends on the amount of views you get.
Very good point. And I always tell people, build a brand, not a business. People get caught, don't they, by building what looks like a monetary way of building a life as opposed to a sustainable way. And that actually brings me to something I want to ask you. How do you manage to keep going? I mean, you're producing so much content for your clients, for yourself. How do you do that? I mean, how do you keep going?
Yeah, sometimes it's hard, but I've learned the importance of a team and actually hiring people along the way. And I'd say that's one of my big mistakes. I didn't hire people soon enough. And I tried to do everything like filming, writing, editing all myself, which was just way too much pressure. And you're always like, we're doing TikToks like twice a day at one point during lockdown. It was great fun. And the grind and the hustle culture, like Gary Vee talks about, it is great for a certain period of time, but then you get burnt out and you need someone along on the journey with you. That's why it was great to have Dad, as well as we've got Kai now and Sam who edits our videos. So it's great to have a team together where we can enjoy it and then push together on our goals, and it doesn't feel like it's all on our shoulders.
I think this is a very good point for the listeners listening. I have felt the same thing, that no one can do it on their own. No, you definitely need to get some people in that can help you. But I think there is always that cash flow, right? There's always that. I mean, YouTube takes years to build up in reality. It's incredible what you've done in a year with your YouTube channel.
And I think it was the TikTok that really fast-tracked that, actually.
Yeah, I mean, I think you built up a fan base, really, right? You brought value for a long time to people, and that translated into YouTube. But equally, YouTube is a different animal. You've had to really work that channel, right? But I think what I see for a lot of people, I mean, podcasts even, the average podcast doesn't get past for episode 4.
Really?
So that's on average. So, and I know you've launched a podcast.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about why you decided to launch a podcast. For my people listening, anyone that wants to listen to your podcast, we'll put the links down below. But perhaps tell people why you started that.
Yeah, our podcast is like father, like son. So it's about sharing our different perspectives based on maybe our age and our experiences. Dad's in a product-based business where he sells radio-controlled models, whereas I'm in a service-based business where I teach people how to run a YouTube channel. And also videography in the past, not so much now. But it's sharing our different opinions based on investing, business, and then having guests on to talk about business with them and investing and anything they're doing, really. We like to keep it quite broad. We had a guy that was counting cards recently, and he was really cool to talk to because you actually see that as a viable business. Like, he is learning how to win at blackjack over time. He's got an investor, and we always ask, like, what's your best what thing would you invest all your money in if you could, and if you had to? And he said in blackjack, because he knows that the return would be there. He just needs to play for long enough.
Well, gambling is an interesting element, isn't it? Because I think entrepreneurship, people would say you have to be a gambler to be an entrepreneur, but I think calculated gambles, and sometimes this is one of my issues with crypto. In a way, you put money into Bitcoin, there's not much we can do unless you're Elon Musk to affect the price, right?
He's clever with that, though, isn't he?
Well, he's very clever. I'd love to know his actual holdings. I wish it was a bit more transparent, but it is ultimately not something generally you can control. Whereas if you're investing in your own YouTube channel and you're putting time into it, you can control it. And if you're persistent and you're consistent over time, it will have some sort of success, right?
Yeah, I'm always concerned about how many people throw their money into crypto, like all of their money, and then they don't put it into their business, and they think that that's less risky. It's so shocking, actually.
Well, I feel the same way about stocks and shares. And just a disclaimer, we're not a finance channel, but it is interesting, isn't it? Because it's almost like, well, I'll give all my money to that person over there and hope whoever's running that company makes me rich, as opposed to put the money into their own personal brand, for example, which I think is, everyone's going to be a personal brand going forward. Every single person who gets hired or works for themselves has a personal brand element to it. Right?
Yeah,
So
it's such a superpower, and I think lots of people are overlooking that. Even on Dragon's Den, like Stephen Bartlett has such a powerful personal brand now, and he's literally become the dragon. Like people are coming in there for him now because the others don't have that massive personal brand that they could have. And I think now people are going to start transitioning into building their personal brands a bit more because they're so important.
So you mentioned earlier, and just to end the podcast, because I know we only have you for a short amount of time, but to end the podcast, you mentioned earlier about how you wish you'd hired people earlier. Are there any other learnings if you went back and told the younger Curtis? I mean, you're quite young. How old are you now?
23 now.
23. Yeah. You're so far ahead of the game, I think. But if you went back to the younger Curtis, what advice would you give?
I would just say constantly learn along the way and be open to new ideas. One of the things I learned quite young, I was about 17 or so, I went into an award ceremony for one of my videos at school. It got into the London award ceremony for filmography. And I went out there and they said they were going to give me a special mention, and I never got that special mention. I sat there watching all the other films and I think that they're not as good as mine. Then I said a few things to the people that I regret. Not rude as such, but I didn't bite my tongue as I should have done. So I think biting your tongue when you're coming up in business is a good thing, and always learn that there is stuff you can learn along the way. Always know you can learn stuff and be open to new ideas, and don't be shut off to like, I know everything already and there's nothing I can do differently. Because people think that even if you get successful, you can lose it so quickly because you're not looking at what's next.
I think that story you just shared there, thank you for sharing it. It's a very personal thing, and I think the listeners can learn a lot from that, because often we're here, if you see something in the world that's not right, you feel that's not right, just say it. But there is something to be playing the long game, I guess, and thinking long term about the relationships you're building, and not necessarily going straight to the judge and say you didn't mention me and burning a bridge, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And instead maybe being subtle about it, and so that's a good reflection.
And maybe understanding that they know a lot more than you do, and it is knowing that maybe they're looking at certain things that you don't even see because you're not even considering it. And that's something I should have done back in the day, but I've taken that forward, and it's really helped me in business.
The one big thing I take away every time I talk to you, and I want people not to miss this, is that you always put yourself in the shoes of other people. You put yourself in the shoes of the owners of TikTok, how they might feel, the audience listening, of course, and how they feel and what they need. And even here at the end, you're saying the same again, really. You put yourself in the shoes of the judge that didn't mention you, right? That is a superpower, by the way. That if my audience could pick up one thing from you today, it would be that.
I've never really thought about it like that.
It really is.
Yeah, it does.
Because we're individual. We're selfish as an individual unit, right? We're actually meant to be tribal, but we've become selfish as individuals. And so you keep, every time I ever meet you, you remind me of it. Hopefully my audience have also grasped that today. So thanks, Curtis, for taking time out.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Thanks for listening to Pep Talk. We hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow The Purposeful Project on all our social media channels, where we're giving away even more free business secrets and entrepreneurial value. Again, we'd like to thank our sponsor GoDaddy for powering this podcast. From naming a business to buying a domain name to building your website for free, GoDaddy has you covered. For 40% off GoDaddy tools, click the link in the podcast note below and use the code GDXPepTalk. See you next time, entrepreneurs, and remember, you're not alone.